big ball. Going for the big shot, and he hits it.
That's batted into the air, intercepted, and the Bears are going to win it.
The Bears are back after what feels like a super long time off. I don't know about you, Steve, but I feel like this bye week has gone by significantly faster compared to other bye weeks that we've kind of had to experience, especially over the last 7 or 8 years. What's up? Welcome into the Halas Beat. Usayd, Koshul, Steve, Letizia here. Check us out on Twitter at CFC Bears, at Halas Beat, and at Usayd Koshul. I mean, there's a lot to digest here because we were talking last time about how this team is 2-2. They're going into the bye week. They're going to be healthy, but now you've got that big rematch against the Commanders, and the narratives, obviously, with this one, I feel like are not as crazy as I thought they'd be. But then again, it's Thursday and the game's on Monday, so I'm sure the narratives will pick up this weekend.
Yeah, and it feels even longer with the Monday game. That'll really hit in Sunday at noon when you turn on the TV and you're like, oh man, I still have to wait another day for the Bears. But yeah, it's a long break. I think, yeah, I've seen some going back and forth on Twitter between Bears fans and Commanders fans about the quarterback situation. It's just like, can we let these guys just play? Like, these quarterbacks don't play each other. Like, we know that, right? Like, it's possible both these quarterbacks are going to be good, which I think is going to be the case. But yeah, it's interesting, the bye week came out, I think, at a good time for them. I thought they were going to come out a little bit healthier. They had, Jaquan Brisker popped up on the injury report during the bye week, which is never a good thing. But I think, like I said, it was a good time for the bye. I think, now that we were at the bye, I think it's okay to expect a little bit more, from both sides of the ball. Not that either side has played particularly terrible through the first 4 games, but I think it's okay to expect things to be a little bit just cleaner kind of across the board. No less pre-snap penalties, less, miscommunications, stuff like that. So really excited to get into this part of the season because I think this is going to be a turning point for the Bears.
Yeah, and you talk about turning point, and I'll address that in just a second. But first off, Ben Johnson, I don't know if you guys caught his presser on Wednesday, but he was asked pretty much about Jayden Daniels versus Caleb Williams, and he kind of gave the answer that I feel like you and I have been pretty consistent in giving, in the sense that, hey, Jayden's really good, Caleb Williams is really good too, but they're both good in their own right. This whole thing of, this Caleb versus Jayden Daniels is exactly like Mahomes versus Josh Allen, or like Brady versus Manning, where it's kind of just like, it's this fan-driven narrative that, quite frankly, is kind of getting tiring at this point. Because I think, as a Bears fan, right, the sooner that you accept that Caleb Williams is good in his own right, and you stop worrying about these other quarterbacks and what some of these other QBs from the 24 class are doing, or even 23 or 22 or 21, that is, I think, when, you're truly going to have a content perspective with what this team is and where they're at. But, you talk about turning point. I love the fact that you use that word. And the reason being is because, let's just go back, 60 or 70 days ago in the middle of summer, we're sitting here and we're looking at, the first 4 out of the bye, and we're saying, all right, so you got to face Dan Quinn and the Commanders. You get a little bit of a break with that Saints game because everyone knew that the Saints weren't going to be good, but then it was, now we have to face Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow in basically 2 straight games. Now, obviously, we know that, Jackson and Burrow, the Bengals and Ravens, have not been as good as anticipated. So the schedule does look a little bit lighter for the Bears in that sense. But I also think that focusing in on this Commanders game, I mean, if there's any game to kind of signal a true turning point this season, it is this one. As crazy as it sounds, like, yeah, I want the Bears to beat the Packers in Philadelphia later in the year, but I think that this is the game that kind of sets the foundation for how the rest of the season plays out.
I agree. I mean, you got 2 straight wins, but the Cowboys aren't a great team, and especially not a good defense. They might have one of the worst defenses in the league, although they held the Jets in check pretty well. Then you have the Raiders, who are just objectively a bad team. So your 2 wins have come against teams that, really aren't that great. Now, you play who you play, so you're never going to apologize for a win. But I think the Commanders are a clear step up from both of those teams. And if you want to make the playoffs and make a run of the playoffs, you have to beat good teams. And that's what the Commanders are. So I think this is a good litmus test for the Bears on where they'll be at. I think especially defensively, the Commanders aren't great defensively, but they have a pretty good offense. With Jaden Daniels, he hasn't been quite as good as he was last year, but he's still a dynamic athlete and he's still a gifted passer. It looks like they got their run game going with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt kind of taking over that lead role. So that's going to be kind of what I'm looking for. Can this defensive line stop this passing attack and rushing attack from the Commanders? That's going to be really telling going forward. I expect the Bears offense to come out of the bye and put up some points. In the grand scheme of things, if all the things I'm worried about, the offense is on the back end at this point. So I think if they can come out and show that they can compete with a good offense against a good quarterback, a team with a good rushing attack, that's going to be really big for, like you said, going into and beating the Packers later on, who also have a good rushing attack. You mentioned the Ravens. Yeah, they're having a down season, but they also have, Derrick Henry. Can you stop the guys like that? The Lions have a good rushing attack. Can you stop that? I think this is a good early season test for the Bears. I'm not sure they can do it because honestly, the defensive line has been pretty rough through the first 4 games. But you do get Austin Booker back. It's looking like this week, potentially. Nothing confirmed yet, but he was a full participant today in practice, in their simulated practice. So hopefully he's back. He can at least help with the pass rush a little bit. But yeah, I think this is kind of a statement game for the Bears.
Yeah, and you bring up statement game, I also, for as injured as the Bears are, the positive is that the Bears have a little bit of breathing room when it comes to some of these injuries, just because of that depth. But then, I think you look at the Commanders injury report, and granted, it's only Thursday, but the Commanders don't have Terry McLaurin. He's obviously out on Thursday with a quad injury. Then you got Chris Rodriguez Jr.'s out with a calf injury. He didn't practice. Deebo Samuel, it was a heel injury / they're calling it a NIR, which I guess is just like a rest day. He didn't practice either. And then Noah Brown was limited. And John Bates was limited as well, the tight end. So I think, when we talk about like the Bears, right, the positive is that this is a team where obviously, you'd like to see a Grady Jarrett and Jaquan Brisker out there, but I think I'm content with some of the depth that this team has to hopefully step up, and I'm putting my trust in Dennis Allen and his ability to make sure that this defense is kind of turning things around. Because I do think that, with TJ Edwards, the positive is going to be that when he's ready to go, he should provide a major spark for this team that, maybe, just maybe, this defense hasn't necessarily had through the first 4 games.
Yeah, and you're getting Kyler Gordon back too, which is going to be huge because if Deebo Samuel plays, he's going to be that guy in the slot. And he's on the older side. He's not really kind of what he used to be, but he's still a very good player. So Kyler Gordon, having him back over the middle to kind of, I don't want to say shadow Samuel because he won't shadow him, but to be there to kind of match up against him, having Edwards back as well over the middle of the field will help with that as well. So yeah, it's really nice to have your defense start to get a little bit healthier, your whole team start to get a little bit healthier. Like I said, it kind of sucks to finally get Kyler Gordon back, but then Jaquan Brisker pops up on the injury report. So it's kind of like, you're getting one guy back and then losing another in the secondary. But, he hasn't been ruled out. It's still possible he plays in the game, but this is going to be a big game because it's going to show us. I think this game shows us where the Bears are kind of in the hierarchy of the NFL. Are they going to be just a middle of the pack team that doesn't really throw in the playoffs, or are they going to be in that playoff hunt? This is a really good test for that. And I don't know. I think they're going to come out of this game either with a win or they're going to take it down to the wire. So I think they're in between that. Do they? And another way to look at this is after this game, do they make a trade for a running back? Do they make a trade for the pass rusher? Or do they just keep their draft picks and wait till next year? If they come out with a win and a decisive win, Ryan Poles might be a little bit more willing to, part with a draft pick to get a running back or a pass rusher or whatever they identify as a need. If they come out with a loss and you're 2-3 and you just lost to an NFC team that's, good but not great, are you really going to trade assets for someone who might help you this year but maybe not so much down the road? So, with the trade deadline coming up, I think that's something you really got to keep in mind. So we'll have a good idea come Monday night.
Yeah, and you talk about, the adding and subtracting here. First off, Gordon's on the injury report, but he was a full participant. Obviously, Jaquan Brisker pops up there on the report and did not practice Thursday. So it's essentially just this sort of addition by subtraction or subtraction by addition is kind of the way I view it. But, speaking of a lot of these moves, this really speaks to me, the greater conversation about what this roster is and where it's at. Because, we did go into the year, I think you and I were pretty much in agreement that this was a team that could win anywhere between 7 and 10 games. This was a very high upside roster. And again, we've seen the upside certainly pop up in certain places, but I also fully believe that just looking at this team and where this roster is at right now, this is the game that I think shows that the Bears have their core for the future on one side of the football, or the fact that, which I think is going to be the offense, but it's also going to show us that this is a roster that still has some holes, which quite frankly, going into year 4 of a GM's tenure, this is a team that really shouldn't have those holes, but unfortunately they do exist.
Yeah, they definitely have those holes. I think, regardless of the outcome of this game, there are very clear holes on this roster. But it also, to your point of if they come out of this game, you have your core, I think that's very valid as well. Because you can have holes on your roster if you have a really good quarterback and you have a really good young wide receiver and you have a good right tackle and you have those kind of pieces in place. You can sign depth, you can draft depth. That shouldn't be an issue. You can get a starter in free agency. You'll have multiple picks to get a starter as well, so you can fill in those gaps. Ryan Poles obviously has to be better at evaluating talent and better in free agency and better in the draft, but as long as you have those core pieces, which we're starting to see develop and mesh together, it doesn't matter as much who you have kind of at the periphery of your team. If you have the quarterback in place, if you have a wide receiver in place, if you have the head coach in place, you can still win a lot of games that way. Look at the Bengals. Bengals when they had Joe Burrow healthy the last couple of years. They had clear holes on their defense. They had clear holes on their offensive line, but they had a quarterback. They had 2 really good wide receivers. They had a good play caller, and they were still able to win a lot of games. And now, if you're in that situation, your quarterback gets hurt, then you're looking at what the Bengals are now, which is just a very bad team. But to the point, if you have all those pieces in place, you can hide a lot of warts on your team. But I do think there are still some clear warts on this team, which is why we're not talking about the Bears as a Super Bowl contender right now. We're talking about them as like you said, a team that could win 7 to 10 games, maybe surprise people. But it's becoming more evident by the week that the main pieces are in place, and that's really all that matters for this year.
Okay, am I crazy to think that this is going to be a DJ Moore breakout game? Because DJ Moore's been quiet. The receiver room at this point has been all Rome Odunze. Obviously, he's got the 5 touchdowns in 4 games, which, again, I know some of you guys are going to come at me on Twitter and be like, but you wanted them to take Olu Fashanu back in 2024. But I also kind of backed it up and said, listen, you can't go wrong with Odunze or Olu Fashanu, because I've had people come after me for that crazy statement. But the big thing is this, though, right? Is it's DJ Moore's got 16 or 17 receptions this year. He's got 1 touchdown, I believe. So he hasn't been the DJ Moore of, I guess late that we're used to seeing in terms of the 23 and 24 DJ Moore. But I do think that this is going to be a game where we're going to see more of DJ Moore than we like. or I guess more than some people expect. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say part of that is because the Bears are going to figure something out in the running game. And I think that that's going to involve DJ Moore and his ability to be a versatile player.
I think this could be a DJ Moore breakout game. I like that a lot because, like you said, it's been a lot of Rome Odunze so far in the year, and DJ Moore hasn't really put up the stats that you want out of your number 1/number 2 receiver, or whatever you label them as. But I do think he's been getting open. I don't think that's been an issue for him. I think he just really hasn't been the focal point of the game plan as much as Odunze have been and other players have been. Even like they've schemed up touches for like Colston Loveland and Luther Burden, and to a lesser extent, Cole Kmet, and Zacchaeus as well. They schemed up some touches for him as well. They haven't really done that a ton with DJ Moore. They've had a couple screens. They've obviously had him in the backfield, but I think he is getting open. I think I saw separation stats on Twitter put it out, which you always got to take those with a grain of salt. Just throwing that out there. Take those with a grain of salt. But DJ Moore was at the top of or near the top of that list. So he's doing what he needs to be doing. I think he just really doesn't have that connection with Caleb Williams that maybe Rome Odunze does. And I think they've made a conscious effort to make Rome Odunze kind of the number 1 receiver, but I do think they'll get him involved in the run game as well. I thought he had some good rushes earlier in the year, but they've really only given him 1 or 2 a game. But with how bad the running game has been up to this point, you have to look at all options. And DJ Moore should be kind of an option in that run game. I'd also like to see them use him out of the backfield in the passing game more, because you've given him a couple rushes, but every time he lines up in the backfield, it's essentially either a rush or a play action, and he's kind of just a decoy. I would love to see him on an option route out of the backfield on a linebacker, get an easy reception. It's going to be very difficult for a linebacker or a safety to cover DJ Moore out of the backfield like that. So I do think this could be a breakout game because teams I think are going to start kind of keying in on Rome Odunze a little bit more because he's been such a focal point. So if teams start keying in on Rome Odunze, someone else has to step up. And with, I still like the Colston Loveland pick, but he's still a rookie who's been banged up. I like Zacchaeus, but he's still, a veteran journeyman who kind of is what he is. So if they do key in on Rome Odunze, start putting safeties over the top, start bracketing him, start doing whatever they want to do to slow him down, someone else has got to step up. It's going to give opportunities to other guys, and I would hope that would be DJ Moore kind of filling in that role. Back to you, just before I pass it back to you said about the Olu Fashanu versus Rome Odunze debate. I don't think that was a ridiculous thing at all. I think you can't really go wrong with either of those players. Olu Fashanu's been pretty good for the Jets so far this year, so I don't blame you for having that take, but I am glad we have Rome Odunze though.
I mean, listen, I'm just going off of like, hey, this team needed offensive linemen, so this is what it needed to be. But okay, see, beyond just that though, here is the big thing to sort of keep in mind as well. Okay, first of all, you mentioned Zacchaeus. He was with the Commanders last year, so this is a Olamide Zacchaeus revenge game right here. But, to your point about DJ Moore getting more involved out of the backfield, the Bears do, in a sense, have the personnel needed to go with 3 guys in the backfield. And what I mean by that is, your quarterback, and then you could really have 3 running backs in there. I would not be surprised. See, it's interesting because Ben Johnson comes from this sort of, personnel background where you do have, there's obviously 11 and 12 personnel, but then I also think that there's 21 and 22 personnel in a sense. And again, Durham Smith, the 3rd string tight end, was with Ben Johnson way back in the day in Miami. But you also, I think, look at 22 personnel with 2 tight ends, so Cole Kmet, Colston Loveland, or even Durham Smith, and a combination of the 2. And then a DJ Moore back there, or a DeAndre Swift or Kyle Monangai back there. And I think really the 21 and the 22 personnel would work well for this team. One, because you'd have the spinner series, which would create a ton of misdirection, and this team would effectively be able to manufacture a ton of, open touches and really keep defense on their toes. But then I also think that the second thing is that when you look at what this team currently has, like, let's be real, in a sense, until you get the tackle situation figured out, you can't ask Caleb Williams to be this true crazy good drop back passer and push the ball down the field for 40, 50, 60 yards. And it's not me saying it's not going to happen. It's just me saying, like, yeah, the Bears could do that, but you can't always trust the offensive line for this team. And the Raiders game was proof of that. The second thing, though, is that this team can use, 2 or 3 guys in the backfield to force defenses to basically pack the box and then hope that a Rome Odunze or a Luther Burden or even a Loveland or a Komet is able to go ahead and get open on those short to intermediate routes. I think right now, like, have we seen the short and intermediate plays from this passing offense? Yes. Have we seen some of the deep shots? Yes, we have, which, for those of you wondering, to me, a deep shot is anything that's more than 20 yards down the field, right? So if the ball's at like the opposing 30-yard line, a deep shot to me would be like you are getting to midfield or past midfield, for example, okay? But if you can start to use, 21 or even 22 personnel and you get these touches for DJ Moore, he's not just a guy that's a decoy. I think that he's a guy that's running routes out of the backfield, someone that is taking those short and intermediate throws and really being a short and intermediate route runner and then getting the yards after the catch to essentially explode.
Yeah, and to that point, we've talked a ton about the running game struggling. So if you don't have a running game, you have to make up for it in that quick passing game. And I think having DJ Moore in the backfield and having multiple guys in the backfield can help give you different looks to kind of make that happen. Just basically cause confusion for the offense in that quick passing game. And also to your point with, you're looking like you're going to be starting 2 backups at tackle this week, most likely, with Theo Bennett at left tackle and Ozzie Trapillo on the right side, assuming Darnell Wright doesn't, get healthy enough before this game. You're not going to just be dropping back in straight drop backs and throwing the ball deep. There's going to be heavy play action. And when you are in those maybe like second and long situations, you're going to most likely see a lot of just underneath passes, get the ball into your playmakers' hands and let them make plays. And that is an area I think DJ Moore is, better than Rome Odunze. Rome Odunze, I think, is a really good receiver. If there's one, knock on him, I'd say he's not great after the catch. But DJ Moore is good after the catch. So if you are in like a second and long situation, you need to pass, but you don't need to get all the yards back. I think that's where DJ Moore can really be helpful for your team. Get him the ball, in space, see what he can do. Maybe he picks up 7-8 yards, gets you into a manageable third down where you don't have to, again, be in an obvious passing situation. So I think that does make a lot of sense, for him. Obviously, Zacchaeus can do that as well. Or screens for the running back, whatever it may be. But DJ Moore seems to me to be the best guy that you have to do that, and I would love to see him get involved a little bit more. But I think I also have seen a lot of people talking about trading DJ Moore. I think that's on the table in the offseason, not right now. I think that is on the table in the offseason. But I just want to say that I never think it's a bad thing to have multiple weapons. You guys might not have the production you want, the stat sheet stuffers, in Madden, it doesn't look good when a guy has 50 receptions on a year. But when you have multiple weapons like that, it just makes the defense's job so much more difficult. So even if a guy's not making a reception on a play, it doesn't mean he's not having an impact on that play. So you need to have those multiple weapons to make, Rome Odunze's job easier. Maybe Rome Odunze is going to be that 100-catch receiver, 1,200-yard receiver every year. But in order for him to do that, you need other guys stressing the defense as well. So if you just trade DJ Moore, which I'm not saying I'm totally against in the offseason, you have to replace him with someone. You still need those wide receivers. And as much as I like Luther Burden and Colson Loveland, haven't shown anything this year to say they are for sure that guy who can take up that DJ Moore role, that number wide receiver 2 role. So just want to keep that in mind as we discuss DJ Moore's role on this team and going forward.
And again, you talk about Burden as well as Loveland. The big thing there to understand is it's like you didn't draft them to be good in 2025. Like, it would be great if they were, but you drafted them to be good in 26, 27, 28, and hopefully way beyond that as well. So those were kind of picks for the future, not necessarily the present. But, your point about DJ Moore, and last thing that I'm going to say here about the offensive side of the ball is that, especially as it pertains to this discussion, is that when we talk about what this team is right now, if you're the Bears, you don't trade DJ Moore at the trade deadline. And the reason being is because why would you break up a core and a part of your roster and a positional group that isn't entirely even broken and underperforming? It's just not in a sense of, they haven't figured it out yet how to make everything mesh together. So this isn't it's broke, we got to fix it situation. I think that if you do trade DJ Moore, you do it in the offseason after you get 17 or 18 games of legitimate tape on whether or not you should get rid of him and what he does in this offense. Because the reality of it is that, it does take a full year to learn, an entire system. But the weird part about this game is that this defense, I feel like, is in a much better groove compared to what we've seen. We've got 4 turnovers each over the last 2 games, which is obviously really good. Tyreek Stevenson, basically came out and was like, yeah, I'm sorry for that loss, and I promise to be better. I'm never going to live that loss down. There's been, I think, a true growth moment for Tyreek Stevenson this offseason, and I feel like it's one of the big reasons that even though Jalen Johnson's been out, I'm suddenly confident that this secondary led by Stevenson is going to hold it down and have a lot of success Monday night.
Yeah, Stevenson's been great over the last couple weeks. I think even the first week, he wasn't great, but he wasn't that bad. The game against the Lions was a little bit rough, but he really bounced back for that the last 2 weeks, which is really good to see. Cornerback's just a really hard position to play in the NFL on a consistent basis. Even the best guys are going to have bad games from time to time. It's almost impossible. I mean, yeah, you can have the Darrelle Revis years, the Champ Baileys, and stuff like that, where they're just locked down from start to finish. But your cornerback too, those kind of second tier guys, those guys are going to have bad games from time to time, just because the nature. It's just the nature of the position. So seeing him bounce back after one bad game with 2 really good games is really nice to see. Kind of going into the season and then after the Lions game, I was like, man, I'm going to have to start watching more corners in the draft because we need a corner. Now after these last 2 weeks, I'm like, okay, that would be really good if he could just lock up that QB2 position and we don't have to use a draft pick on that. And we can use that draft pick on a running back or a defensive lineman or whatever it is. So that's really good to see. Obviously, having Kyler Gordon back is great as well. What I really want I think big storyline that I'm looking at is Tyreek Stevenson. I want to see him build on that. I want to see him really just solidify himself as a starting quality cornerback. I think the other thing I want to see out of this game from the defense in particular, because we talk a lot about the offense, is we got to stop the run. We have not been good against the run. Even I think our best defensive game was against the Cowboys. And even that game, Javonte Williams early in the game was kind of running all over us. Tyreek Stevenson had that strip of him on the sideline, but that was like a 25-yard gain before that fumble. And then in that game, we just got so far ahead, the Cowboys kind of had to abandon the run and then just kind of keep passing. So the run defense is really a big concern for me. I think Kyle Gordon will help there. I think TJ Edwards will help there. But the Commanders do have a really good rushing attack because it's very difficult to defend a team when you have a good rushing attack, but also a quarterback who can run because you have to, on every run play, basically have a guy with eyes on Jaden Daniels to make sure he doesn't, scramble out of that as well. So it's really difficult to stop a team like that. And the Bears haven't really shown they can do it, but they have to start defending the run a lot better if they want any chance of making the playoffs. Otherwise, teams are just going to run all over us. So I think that's really what I want to see out of this game. It's just a good performance from the defensive line. I know they have their their issues. I don't expect them to be a great pass rushing defensive line. It just kind of is what it is at this point. Hopefully Austin Booker helps that, but even I don't think that's going to, make a huge difference. But they should be able to stop the run at least. That's kind of why you have those big defensive ends, those big long defensive ends at Dennis Allen's scheme, is to stop the run and then rush the passer secondary. And so far they haven't done their first job and they haven't done their second job either. So I really want to see some good run stuffs from this defensive line. That's what I'm looking for.
Last thing here before we kind of close it out, man, let's take a couple minutes here to discuss the offensive tackle situation. We mentioned earlier in the show, Darnell Wright still has that elbow injury. He has been out for a couple weeks now, so no knowing what's going to happen with him. Hopefully the Bears do get better news on Friday and Saturday. And just again, full disclosure, guys, whatever Saturday's injury report is will ultimately be the final injury report before the game. And so Thursday is essentially a walkthrough. The Bears will have more practice Friday and Saturday, and whatever you see Friday and Saturday determines who's playing in the game. But are the Bears going to be okay if Ozzie Trapilo is at right tackle and Theo Benedict's at left tackle in this game? Because I was talking with someone on another show, and I kind of said, look, I'm fine with Ozzie Trapilo at right tackle, by the way. What I also said, though, was this. You know who and what Braxton Jones is at this point. That Braxton Jones is this average left tackle. He's kind of your, classic, I guess, veteran starter where he's like a Toyota Camry, basically, right? Where he's going to do the job for you, get you from point A to point B, but you're never going to have, all the, I guess, fanciness with him per se. But then you've got Theo Benedict, who again is an undrafted free agent, but is this sort of intriguing model on the market, this intriguing car that you're just hey, I'm intrigued by that and I'm willing to give this a go instead of the Toyota Camry, because I know what the Camry is, but I don't know what this new car is necessarily going to hold for me.
Yeah, I'd say Braxton Jones it's like a Toyota Camry, but that has 150,000 miles on it. It's working, but it also could crap out at any second. But yeah, I think that's fair. The Bears are in a tough situation. I mean, obviously, Darnell Wright's your best offensive lineman, best young offensive lineman. Losing him is always going to be a negative. Ozzie Trapilo is a rookie. He's not going to be as good as Darnell Wright is. It's just the way it is. Your hope is that he, in his rookie year, he can be serviceable and not kill you. With Theo Benedict, it's a little bit more of a wild card. We don't really know. The last game against the Raiders, when I was watching the game, I thought just live, I was like, the offensive line's actually kind of holding up a little bit better in the second half. The L-22 was not as promising. They did not look that good. They were. So I think what you're going to have to do is you're going to see a lot more play action, even though they run play action a lot. You're going to have to basically rely on play action. You're going to have to rely on running backs chipping, tight ends chipping. You're going to have to do a lot of different things that just limit other things you can do offensively because you have these two tackles that are question marks. So when you have, maybe you're keeping an extra tight end in to help block. That's just one less guy out on a route that the defense has to worry about. Maybe you're you're chipping a running back. That's just, again, one less guy that the defense has to worry about running routes. So it does limit you a little bit. I think they can get around it, but man, if they can just solidify that left tackle position, you're not going to do that, at the trade deadline. But if you can do it in the offseason, I think this offense can really, really take off, because we've seen what Caleb can do with a clean pocket. He's one of the best graded quarterbacks in a clean pocket in the NFL. And you might say, you got to see what he can do under pressure, but clean pocket, passer rating, and everything like that, how a quarterback operates when they're kept clean, is the most stable metric for future success of quarterbacks. And Caleb Williams is at the top of the list this year. So, man, if you could just keep him clean, the Bears are going to be really rolling, but it's going to be tough to do with Theo Benedict and maybe Ozzie Trapilo out there.
I mean, hey, first of all, you mentioned a second tight end. That goes back into the conversation of this team needs to run more 22 personnel. But I guess here's the good news. Okay, so you look at Caleb Williams. I mean, he's only been sacked 7 times in 4 games this year, which I understand, that's a number that's highly inflated because of the 4 sacks in that week 2 loss against the Lions. But also the big positive is this: the last 2 games he's only been sacked 1 time, and so it's one of those situations to where I'm more content with Benedict and Trapilo running the show here because you know what Braxton Jones is at this point, and hell, if it's not going to be Benedict, maybe give Karan Amagaji a shot. But like at this point, you kind of know what you have in that average veteran in Braxton Jones. Like he's the Charles Leno Jr. of this generation in a sense, right? You know who he is. You know he's going to be good for you, but I think it's also time to give someone else a chance to go ahead and prove them wrong. And again, maybe the Bears, mix up some crazy O-line combinations and they say, hey, we're going to try Joe Thuney at that spot, because I wouldn't put it past this team to do this, where it's like Joe Thuney's playing that spot, but then also what's happening is they're getting someone such as, I don't even know, man. I mean, Luke Newman playing guard or something in order to hopefully figure this thing out. Like, we'll see, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't rule it out either. I would, if it were up to me, I would just keep Joe Thuney at left guard. That seems like creating one hole to try and fix another. I'd rather just have the solid left guard there than. But like you said, I wouldn't rule it out necessarily, but it's not what I would do. Well, we'll see. I'd rather just roll with Benedict and Jones.
There you go, folks. I guess today we learned that instead of just patching a hole up with super glue, Steve's gonna fix the whole thing. With his own 2 bare hands. I guess that's a fair analogy right there, dude. Because it's you don't really know what you don't want to create one hole just to patch up another one with super glue. Anyways, we're gonna get out of this place. So make sure you're following us on Twitter at CFC Bears, at Usayd Koshul, and at Halas. Check out the Bear Report website as well. Make sure you're liking, commenting, and subscribing to the show. Anything you guys want to see us discuss in next week's episode based on what you see in the Commanders game, be sure to comment down below. We will for sure go ahead and discuss all that during next Thursday's episode. Make sure that you're locked into the Bear Report website. We got a ton of coverage, a lot of really good tidbits live from Halas every single day on the site as well. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, bear down and have a fun and safe weekend. Enjoy the game Monday night. We'll see you guys next Thursday.